Let that land. Because in the noise of the world, in the blur of endless scrolling, in the burnout disguised as ambition, most men are no longer choosing how they deal with anything. They're reacting, automatically, mindlessly. We live in a time where the loudest man in the room is often the most insecure, where endless thinking is mistaken for intelligence, and constant talking is confused with confidence. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The strongest man is not the most visible. He's the most centered. He doesn't need to announce himself. He doesn't chase validation. He doesn't explain his every move because he knows real power doesn't rush. Real power doesn't scream. Real power listens. We've built a world that feeds our attention and starves our soul. You check your phone 96 times a day, but you haven't checked in with your own mind once. You have 17 tabs open in your browser, but none open in your heart. You've read 50 productivity hacks but can't sit still for 5 minutes. You've trained your fingers to scroll, but forgot how to sit alone with your own thoughts. You're overinformed and underaligned. And that's why this video isn't just another motivational reel. This is an invitation to reset, to turn down the noise, to return to yourself, to discover the rare kind of strength that doesn't need applause to be real. Because Stoicism doesn't teach you to become a statue. It teaches you to become a mountain, still, unshaken. Not because the storm didn't come, but because you finally realized you are the storm. So if you're tired of the chaos, the chatter, the need to prove anything to anyone, then listen closely. Because true strength doesn't begin with domination. It begins in the quiet, in restraint, in the subtle art of less. Welcome to a new kind of masculinity. Not softer, not louder, just deeper. Let's begin. There's a dangerous lie we've all been taught to believe, that if a thought shows up in your head, it must mean something. That it's a signal, a truth, a red flag, a warning to act. But here's the reality. Thoughts aren't facts. They're just visitors. Imagine standing at a train station. One by one, the trains arrive. You don't get on every train, do you? You watch, you wait, you choose. That's what your thoughts are. Passing trains. But most men don't know they have that choice. They don't watch the thoughts. They board the first one that shows up, no matter how off track it is. And before they know it, they're deep into anxiety, regret, resentment, or shame. And they don't even know how they got there. This is where Stoicism enters, not as a set of cold, emotionless rules, but as a reminder, you are not your thoughts. You are the observer. This is where it gets real. Let me tell you a quick story. There was a man named Marcus, a hardworking entrepreneur. He was building his business, trying to be a good father, managing pressure from every angle. One evening, after a rough day, he sat in his car and had a thought. I'm failing. I can't do this anymore. That thought felt real. It hit like a punch to the gut. But Marcus had been practicing something ancient, something powerful. He didn't argue with the thought. He didn't suppress it. He didn't feed it. He simply noticed it. That's a thought, not a truth. He took a deep breath. Let the thought come. Let the thought go. That night he went home and tucked his kids into bed. The business didn't collapse. The world didn't end. because he didn't act on a storm that passed through his sky. That's what true mental strength looks like. Not controlling everything, not pretending you're unshakable, but choosing not to be pulled into every mental storm. Because here's the thing, most suffering doesn't come from reality. It comes from believing every thought that shows up in your head. She hasn't texted back? She must not care. That guy looked at me weird. He probably disrespects me. If I don't do this perfectly, I'll fail and disappoint everyone. But stop for a second. Who said those thoughts are true? Where's the evidence? Just because it feels real doesn't make it true. Just because it's loud doesn't mean it's right. That's why Stoic practice begins with this one discipline: observation without reaction. Try this. When a thought shows up, label it. That's fear. That's ego. That's doubt. Don't fight it. Don't feed it. Just sit. Watch. Breathe. Let it pass like a wave, like a breeze, like a train. This practice doesn't make you passive. It makes you precise. Because once you stop reacting to everything, you can finally choose your response. You stop living like a puppet pulled by invisible strings and start living like a grounded man with clarity. You begin to see how many thoughts were just noise, how many judgments were projections, how much peace you were sacrificing for nothing. And slowly, something incredible happens. Your mind gets quieter. Your emotions stop hijacking your behavior. Your energy shifts from scattered to focused. Not because the world outside changed, but because you stopped believing every random thought inside. That's the first layer of true strength. Not physical dominance, not mental gymnastics, but quiet command of your own inner space. So next time your mind floods with doubt, anxiety, or ego-driven fantasies, don't panic. Don't argue. Just sit. Just breathe. And remember, thoughts aren't facts. You are the one who decides what's true. There's a kind of strength that doesn't show up in your muscles. It shows up in your mouth, or rather, in how often you choose not to use it. In a world addicted to noise, where everyone's trying to prove their worth with volume, silence is a signal. It says, I'm not rattled. I'm not chasing approval. I don't need to dominate this space to own it. The Stoics taught that true mastery begins not with more words, but with fewer. And not just fewer for the sake of less, but fewer with more weight behind them. Let's rewind time and meet a man named Elijah. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't loud. He wasn't even particularly charming in a conventional way. But in every room he entered, people noticed. Why? Because when he did speak, people listened. He once sat in a high-stakes boardroom, surrounded by executives tossing opinions around like darts. The conversation was loud, egos were loud, tension was louder, and Elijah, he said nothing. He sat, he listened, not nervously, but calmly, deliberately. And then, when the timing was right, he leaned forward and said 10 words. Simple, direct, clear. The room shifted. People stopped. It wasn't what he said. It was how he said it. Measured, confident, no fluff. And here's what people felt. This man knows something. Not because he claimed it, but because he didn't need to. That's the power of saying less. You see, when you speak all the time, your words start to lose value. They become background noise, forgettable, interchangeable, diluted. But when you pause before you speak, when your words are chosen, when silence isn't awkward, but anchored, then even a few syllables can hit like thunder. And it's not just about impressing people, it's about self-respect. Because when you slow down your words, you slow down your mind. You stop reacting to every jab, every misunderstanding, every invitation to drama. You respond from a place of clarity, not from a place of wounded ego. Here's the secret. People don't remember what you said. They remember how you made them feel when you said it. And calm, grounded words, they make people feel safe, seen, respected. They make you unforgettable. Now let's talk about the flip side. Have you ever watched someone unravel themselves just by talking too much? It's painful to witness. A man who can't stop explaining, can't stop defending, can't stop justifying his every move. He's not in control. He's bleeding insecurity. But a stoic man, he lets silence do the heavy lifting. He listens more than he speaks. He doesn't rush to fill every gap, because he knows presence is louder than performance. The truth is, silence is magnetic. It draws people in. It builds intrigue. It shows that you're not trying to impress. You're simply rooted in who you are. And let's be real. Not every moment requires a response. Not every opinion deserves your rebuttal. Not every conflict is your battle. When you learn to sit with silence, you learn to sit with power. That's what Marcus Aurelius did. That's what Epictetus taught. And that's what men today must reclaim. In your relationships, your business, your daily conversations, say less, mean more. Let your actions do the speaking. Let your eyes hold the message. Let your silence create gravity. Because when you stop trying to fill the space, you become the space. That's real strength. That's stoicism in action. And it's something every man can practice today. Next time someone challenges you, pause. Next time someone gossips, observe. Next time you feel the urge to prove, breathe, then speak. If you still need to, there's a storm raging outside. Job loss, relationships breaking down, money disappearing, dreams shattering in slow motion. You try to hold it all together, grip harder, run faster, push harder. But it's like trying to hold sand in a fist. This is the breaking point for most men. But for the Stoic man, it's the beginning, because he understands one core truth. You cannot control the storm, but you can control the sailor. Let's meet James. 3 years ago, he had it all. A thriving business, a strong marriage, 2 kids, and respect in his community. Then came the crash. The market collapsed. His business folded. Stress swallowed his marriage whole. He lost the house, the car, and the sense of who he was. But the worst part? He lost control, or so he thought. James went through months of depression, self-doubt, and rage. He kept asking, why is this happening to me? Why can't I fix this? Until one day, he stumbled across a single sentence by Epictetus. Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. That hit differently, so he grabbed a notebook, drew a line down the middle of a page, and labeled one side, what I can control. The other, what I can't. On the right, the economy, his ex-wife's feelings, his past choices. On the left, His sleep schedule, his workouts, what he read, who he spoke to, and how he spoke to himself. That was day one. He didn't get his life back overnight. But he began rebuilding, not by chasing the past, but by owning the present. He woke up at 5:30 every morning, ran before the sun rose, journaled, applied for jobs without bitterness, offered value even when it wasn't returned. He didn't try to win back his old life. He began building a better one brick at a time. And here's what happened. He got stronger, not just physically but mentally. He stopped blaming the world. He started creating in it. Fast forward a year. James had a new job, deeper friendships, and peace he'd never known. He still didn't have everything back. But for the first time, he didn't need to, because he realized power isn't about having control. It's about knowing where to place your energy. This is the Stoic principle in motion. Most people live in emotional chaos because they try to control the uncontrollable. Other people's opinions, unpredictable outcomes, the future. But the wise man? He shrinks the battlefield. He doesn't waste energy on storms that won't change for him. Instead, he sharpens his mind. He steadies his breath. He prepares his hands. He knows, what I focus on grows, and what I surrender frees me. This is why Stoicism is not passive. It's not about sitting back and accepting defeat. It's about choosing your fight wisely. It's about stepping into each day like a warrior, but only drawing your sword where it matters. In relationships, you can't make someone love you back, but you can love clearly, speak honestly, and walk away if needed. In business, you can't force success, but you can show up early, stay late, and build value with integrity. In life, you can't control every chapter, but you can write your next line with courage. And when you live this way, focused on the controllables, free from the noise, people will notice. Not because you're louder, but because you're calmer, grounded, respected. You won't need to explain it. They'll feel it. You'll become the man who walks into chaos and brings stillness, because you've done the work, because you know where your power truly lies, not in the outcome, but in the effort. Not in the storm, but in how you steer. So today, ask yourself, what's one thing you're stressing about that you have zero control over? Now let it go. And what's one thing you can control that you've been avoiding? Now go do it. That's how real men move. That's how Stoic strength begins. Imagine your mind as a garden. Every thought, every intention, every second of your attention is a seed. Now ask yourself, what are you planting? Are you sowing peace or anxiety, growth or stagnation, power or distraction? Because the truth is, your mind is always growing something, whether you're aware of it or not. Let me tell you about Malcolm. Malcolm was a brilliant man, sharp, articulate, always thinking 10 steps ahead. But his mind was like a crowded room, full of old regrets, past mistakes, imagined futures, and constant comparison. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't focus. And even though his life looked fine on the outside, he felt stuck, powerless, small. Why? Because he was watering the weeds. He replayed old breakups, He obsessed over missed opportunities. He compared his journey to people 10 years ahead of him, and he gave more energy to the past than to the present that was trying to shape him. One day, a mentor asked him a simple question: "What are you feeding your mind?" That line hit like thunder because it wasn't about intelligence. It wasn't about ambition. It was about attention. So Malcolm began an experiment. Every time he caught himself ruminating, he asked, "Does this help me grow?" When the answer was no, he'd pause, take a breath, and choose to refocus. Instead of checking his ex's profile, he picked up a book on leadership. Instead of spiraling into self-doubt, he journaled 3 things he did well that day. Instead of comparing himself to influencers, he compared himself to the man he was last year, and something incredible happened. His mind got quieter. His confidence returned. He didn't eliminate every negative thought, but he stopped feeding them. See, Stoicism teaches this: you are not the prisoner of your mind. You are the gardener, and if you don't choose what to focus on, the world will choose for you. Algorithms, gossip, fear-based news, old pain, they'll flood your soil if you don't protect it. So how do you focus on what makes you grow? You practice mindful redirection. Here's how. First, recognize the E loop. You're thinking the same unproductive thought for the 5th time today. That's your cue. Second, ask, is this thought useful or just familiar? Just because something feels comfortable doesn't mean it's healthy. Third, shift your gaze. Literally. Go outside. Move your body. Speak truth aloud. Motion creates emotion. Finally, plant something better. A vision, a mantra, a small next step. You don't need to leap forward, just grow forward. And here's the kicker. Growth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's silent discipline. A moment of stillness instead of reaction. A deep breath instead of argument. A new book instead of scrolling. It's subtle, but over time, it reshapes your life. Because where your focus goes, your future flows. Stoic men know this. They don't try to fix every thought. They just stop watering what doesn't serve them. So the next time your mind drifts to pain, comparison, or regret, pause. Take it as a signal, not a sentence. Then choose growth. Choose what sharpens you. Choose what challenges you. Choose what plants peace instead of poison. Remember, you can't control every thought that enters your mind, but you can control which ones you entertain. And in that choice, you reclaim your strength. Because real power isn't about controlling others. It's about controlling your focus, your energy, your soil. So what will you grow today? Because the man you become tomorrow starts with what you feed today. There's a quiet strength in the man who no longer fights reality, not because he gave up, but because he grew up. See, most people misunderstand acceptance. They think it's waving the white flag, surrender, passivity, weakness. But here's the truth. Acceptance is not defeat. It's alignment. It's choosing clarity over chaos. It's standing in front of life, exactly as it is, and saying, I see you. I acknowledge you. Now I move with you, not against you. Let me tell you about Tyler. Tyler spent most of his 20s chasing approval. He was the kind of guy who never said no, always tried to fix everyone else's problems, and wore a smile even when he was breaking inside. He was addicted to validation. From women, friends, social media, even strangers. The compliments felt like fuel. But the silence? The silence felt like death. One day his girlfriend left him. No drama, no final fight. Just, "I'm tired. I don't know who you are anymore." And that shattered him. For weeks, Tyler spiraled. He replayed every moment, every word, every mistake. He blamed her, then blamed himself, then blamed the world for being unfair, until a mentor said something that cracked him wide open. "You suffer not because she left, but because you refuse to accept that she did." That line hit like a lightning bolt. He realized he wasn't just grieving her. He was grieving control. The illusion that if he just tried harder, smiled bigger, loved more, he could make everything stay. But Stoicism says otherwise. You control alignment, not outcomes. You control response. You control where your energy flows next. So Tyler did something radical. He stopped fighting, not in a bitter way, but in a brave way. He stopped asking, "Why me?" and started asking, "What now?" He accepted the pain. He sat with the silence. He cried without shame. And most importantly, he stopped chasing validation from the outside. He began to live, aligned with something deeper. Not his wounds, not his pride, but his truth. And slowly, he healed. Not because he fixed the past, but because he finally faced the present. That's the Stoic way. Epictetus once said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." When you accept what is, you free yourself from the need to explain, justify, or escape. You stop living in should have and start living in now. So what does real acceptance look like? It's watching people walk away and blessing them silently. It's losing the deal and trusting that your worth wasn't tied to the outcome. It's hearing criticism and not letting it shake your foundation. It's realizing that not every door is meant to open, and that's a gift, not a curse. Acceptance doesn't mean you don't care. It means you've learned to care wisely. It's emotional maturity. It's spiritual poise. It's what separates the frantic from the grounded. But here's the catch. Acceptance isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily practice. Every time life throws you something unexpected, you get to choose. React or respond. Resist or align. Deny or accept. And every time you choose acceptance, you reclaim a little more of your energy. That's how you build gravity. Not by forcing the world to bend to you, but by becoming unshakable when it doesn't. So next time life hits you sideways, pause. Breathe. Look at what is. Not what you wanted, not what you imagined, but what is, and meet it with calm, with clarity, with power. Because the strongest men aren't the ones who conquer everything. They're the ones who make peace with everything. And from that peace, they move forward, aligned, rooted, free. In a world screaming for your attention, silence is rebellion. Every second, you're hit with noise, notifications, news feeds, deadlines. Everyone's talking. Everyone's rushing. And in that chaos, something precious gets buried. Your own voice. Stoicism teaches that wisdom isn't found in noise. It's uncovered in silence. Silence is not empty. It's full of answers, but most men fear it. Because silence forces you to face yourself, without filters, without noise, without distraction. That's where the truth lives. Let me tell you about Adrian. Adrian was a successful guy. Well-paid job, big network, constant movement. He prided himself on being efficient. Every moment of his day was scheduled, but something felt hollow. He couldn't name it. He wasn't sad, he wasn't broken, but he felt disconnected from purpose, from presence, from himself. One day, his mentor gave him a challenge. 5 minutes. No music, no phone, no journaling. Just sit still. Adrian laughed. 5 minutes? Easy. But when he tried, his mind screamed. Thoughts ran wild. Old regrets, random to-dos, conversations from 10 years ago. He realized his brain wasn't quiet. It was cluttered. It took 3 weeks before those 5 minutes felt bearable, another month before he actually found stillness. And in that stillness came something unexpected. Clarity. He realized he had been making decisions not from alignment, but from momentum. Pleasing others. Chasing validation. Avoiding stillness like it was a threat. But when he embraced silence, he stopped reacting and started choosing. He didn't quit his job, he didn't flee the city, he just started living with intention. Said no more often. Focused deeper. Spoke less, but when he did, it carried weight. That's the power of silence. Silence teaches restraint. It builds presence. It sharpens intuition. In silence, you remember what matters. You remember who you are, beneath the roles, goals, and masks. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And silence? It reveals which voices in your head are real, and which are just noise. Here's the truth most people never realize. The man who can sit in silence without needing to speak, without needing to scroll, without needing to be seen, is the most dangerous man in the room. Because he listens, he observes, he sees through illusion. And when he speaks, people listen. You want inner power? Don't raise your voice. Deepen your presence. Don't chase attention. Command it through stillness. Don't react. Respond with calm precision. But it starts with you. Alone. Quiet. Honest. So here's your challenge. Every morning, before the world reaches for you, sit in silence, no agenda, just you and your breath, 5 minutes. That's all. It might feel uncomfortable at first, but discomfort is the doorway. Eventually the fog will lift, and what you'll find underneath all the noise is you, clear, grounded, whole. That's Stoic strength. Not in dominating others, but in mastering your mind. Remember, the loudest voice isn't the strongest. The calmest presence is, and silence is your training ground. There's a reason the wise speak last, and rarely. Most men think talking solves everything. You get provoked, you react, you feel tension, you unload. But the truth is, most problems don't come from not speaking enough, they come from speaking too soon. Seneca said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." And part of learning how to live is learning when to stay silent and when to speak. Let me tell you about Malik. Malik was the guy who always had a comeback. Sharp, quick, ready with words. He prided himself on being witty, never losing an argument. Until one day at a family dinner, something cracked. His younger brother, frustrated with life, snapped at him. "You think you're better than us just because you read books now?" Without pause, Malik fired back, cutting, sarcastic, venomous. His brother stormed out, and the silence that followed was louder than anything he'd ever said. That night, Malik couldn't sleep. He replayed it all, over and over. Not just the argument, but the impulse. He didn't pause. He didn't consider where the pain came from. He just reacted. That's when he stumbled across this idea from Viktor Frankl. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And it hit him hard. The space was there. He just never used it. From that day, Malik practiced the pause before answering a text, before replying to criticism, before reacting to conflict. He trained himself to breathe first, think second, speak last. Not because he was afraid, but because he finally understood. Words, once spoken, are irreversible, and silence, when intentional, is power. Over time, something changed. His presence became more grounded. His words carried more weight. People leaned in when he spoke, not because he was louder, but because he wasn't always talking. He stopped arguing to win and started listening to understand. That's what Stoicism teaches. You don't need to say everything you think. You don't need to prove you're right every time. You don't need to defend your ego with every breath. Instead, train your mind to think deeply before you move your tongue. Ask yourself, is this worth saying? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it true? Because once the words leave your mouth, they become your echo in the world. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, the things you think about determine the quality of your mind. And if your words are just reactions, not reflections, your mind becomes a battlefield of noise. But when you pause, when you reflect, you reclaim your power. You become the man who doesn't flinch under pressure, the man who doesn't rush to defend his pride, the man who thinks, feels, discerns, and then speaks, not to dominate, but to direct, not to impress, but to express what's real. So the next time you're triggered, tempted, or tested, remember, you always have a choice. Choose the pause. Choose the space. Choose to think, not just talk, because silence may feel weak at first. But it's the sign of the strongest men. And the ones who talk less but think more? They don't just speak truth, they become it. And while these principles sound powerful in theory, they only become life-changing when we see them lived. Because truth doesn't just reside in philosophy books or Stoic quotes. It breathes in the real lives of men who've hit rock bottom and still chose to rise. Imagine a man sitting in silence, no phone, no noise, no performance, just him and the storm inside. But instead of fighting it, he just watches, and in that stillness, he finally meets the man he was too busy to become. So let me tell you a story, not of a philosopher, but of a man, flawed, pressured, overwhelmed, who discovered what true strength really means. There was a man named David. From the outside, he had it all: a stable job, a family, a decent life. But on the inside, he was crumbling. Not from a dramatic crisis, not from loss or heartbreak, but from something much quieter: the slow erosion of self. Every day felt like noise: meetings, opinions, arguments, news feeds, distractions. He'd wake up already tired, already overwhelmed. His thoughts raced, his mouth kept moving, but he felt like he was nowhere, rootless, spinning. One evening, sitting in traffic after an especially unproductive day, he caught his own reflection in the rearview mirror, and he didn't recognize the man staring back. Not because of age or fatigue, but because that man looked hollow. That night something cracked open. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just sat still, longer than he ever had. And for the first time in years, he chose silence over scrolling, stillness over stimulation. He picked up a journal, wrote just one sentence. What if I've been living wrong, not loudly, but unconsciously? The next morning, he made a vow: not to fix everything, not to become the best version of himself. Just this: to do less, talk less, think better, be present. He started small. 10 minutes of silence before anyone else woke up, then 15, then 30. He didn't meditate for enlightenment. He sat to reclaim his mind. When stress hit, he paused. When anger flared, he didn't react. He reflected. When he caught himself spiraling in thought, he reminded himself, thoughts aren't facts. I choose what gets to stay. He stopped trying to be liked in every meeting. He chose words carefully. Sometimes he said nothing, and it carried more power than his longest speeches. His kids noticed first. Dad, you're quieter now, but like calmer. His wife noticed too. You're not trying to fix everything anymore. You're just here. David didn't become perfect. He still had bad days, still got distracted. But he no longer lived distracted. And over time, something strange happened. The less noise he let in, the more clarity he found. The less he tried to control, the more control he gained over his own emotions, his time, his energy. He stopped chasing validation. He started planting better thoughts. He realized that true power was never about force. It was about alignment. And the man who once felt like a shadow in his own life had become a mountain others leaned on. Not because he was the loudest, but because he was the most grounded. This is the quiet revolution Stoicism offers. Not to escape the world, but to meet it with calm eyes, a steady heart, and a powerful silence. Think less. Talk less. Focus more. Not as a slogan, not as a trend, but as a way of life. In a world that, celebrates noise, speed, and constant reaction, this philosophy is an act of rebellion, a return to stillness, a return to sovereignty. What if your greatest breakthroughs don't come from saying more, but from saying less? What if true intelligence isn't in reacting quickly, but in responding wisely? What if your real strength isn't shown when you're the loudest in the room, but when you're the calmest? This isn't about becoming emotionless. Stoicism is not about denying your humanity. It's about refining it, grounding it, channeling it. It's about learning the ancient truth that Epictetus reminded us of. It's not what happens to you that harms you, but how you choose to deal with it. Each moment of silence you choose, every breath you take before responding, every ounce of energy you redirect from chaos to clarity, those are the moments that shape you, that build your gravity, that make others stop and listen when you finally do speak. In a world drowning in distraction, the man who can hold his focus becomes rare. In a culture obsessed with visibility, the man who moves with intention becomes magnetic. The power isn't in being everywhere, saying everything, knowing it all. The power is in being exactly where you are, fully present, rooted, unwavering. You don't need to be the smartest in the room. You don't need to be the richest, the strongest, or the loudest. You need to be the man who has mastered himself. The man who understands that every thought isn't truth. Every urge doesn't need a voice, and every moment doesn't require movement, because that man, he doesn't chase peace, he is peace. He doesn't look for power, he embodies it, and he doesn't need to prove himself, because his presence does it for him. So today, don't raise your voice. Raise your presence. In a world chasing noise, become the man who commands with calm. Because true power never needs to prove itself. It simply is. The path of Stoicism isn't glamorous. It's not always comfortable. But it's real. And in this world, that makes it revolutionary. Try this today. Pause before your first word in the morning. No phone, no input, just 2 minutes of breath. Label one thought. That's fear. That's ego. Then, let it pass. Speak only when your words bring calm, clarity, or courage. If this message hit home, comment below with the word stillness. Tell me what part resonated most. And subscribe, because this isn't just content. It's a movement, a return to grounded masculinity, true strength, and inner gravity. This is Stoic power. And it begins the moment you stop chasing noise